And here we go. We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be nominal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Doubling up. Roger, roll, Atlantis.
Water towers, fly! Yes!
Tango down to nominal.
Flight downside, SPD off. Bring in, SPD off. Off. It's orange!
R45! Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage. Put that in the big bag, Eagle.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
The methane would be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. You bet. We don't need any more of these.
Welcome, everyone, to another countdown to launch as we get ready for two amazing rocket launches and some amazing couple days coming up in the rocket community. I'm Gene Rowley for NSF, live from the Houston area as we make our way to Starbase for this countdown to launch. And I'm joined today by the one and only Sawyer Rosenstein. Sawyer, thanks for joining us all the way from the Cape in Florida.
It's always good to be here. I mean, we've got an exciting time. We have two heavy lift vehicles on the pad getting ready to launch in the next couple of days. It doesn't get more exciting than that in the space world. A new rocket and the world's most powerful rocket. Let's do it.
Let's do it. And, you know, we're going to talk both rockets, both New Glenn and Starship. So we've got Adrian Bile joining us today for this countdown to launch as well. Adrian, how are you today?
Yeah, not to spoil that much about what we're going to talk, but the angle and shape of the show changed a lot in the last 30 minutes. So it's going to be an interesting one. It's really fun to keep up with both rockets right now. And to make that a tad more easier for everybody here, we now bring the show back so you're updated every single day.
That's right. And we want your questions. Be sure to get those in the chat at NASASpaceflight, and we'll try to get to those as best we can in the next hour when we talk about New Glenn and its maiden flight and also Starship Flight 7. And we're going to jump over and talk immediately right about New Glenn because, as Adrian said, we got some big news right before we went live. And I think I want to go to Sawyer so you can bring us up to date on what's going on with New Glenn. It's bumpy road to and from the launch pad. Sawyer, bring us up to date.
Well, it's not so much bumpy road as it is bumpy seas, apparently. If you look above me, you'll notice that the clock for New Glenn, which should just be a couple hours away, is now saying 31 hours and 51 minutes. That is because we got official word just before the show went on the air that New Glenn is not going to try and launch tonight due to the condition of the seas for the potential landing attempt of that first stage. So instead, they are going to push 24 hours, and they are now going to try 1 a.m. still, so same time period, just 24 hours later. So instead of launching on the 12th, that will be January 13th, with a 3-hour window opening at 1 a.m. Eastern. But the rocket is vertical, it is at the launch pad, and apparently the weather for that day looks a lot better, according to Dave Limp, who's the CEO there. So all things are pointing towards the New Glenn flight coming up still this weekend, just not tonight.
And with rocket launches, sometimes they push, sometimes they don't. There's always that. They want to make sure everything's right, both at the launch site and in the recovery area, and that's really what's going on. So this is not an issue with the rocket, right? This is an issue that with weather, in which none of us control, downrange. But tell us about the rocket. It's looking good. We saw a static fire. It's ready to go, right, Sawyer?
Absolutely. I mean, as you mentioned, we had that static fire a short time ago. They rolled it back into their horizontal facility that they have, their big integration facility / hangar, where they then actually mated the fairing with the Blue Ring simulator payload inside of it. Their sort of pathfinder for a potential satellite bus, so to speak, that they're working on for the future. So the Blue Ring payload was loaded on, attached, they rolled it back out. They brought it vertical just the other day, and as mentioned, it is currently vertical at the pad, and as of now, publicly, they have not said anything about any issues with the rocket itself. The only concern has been that weather. And they did specify the other day, I mentioned this on the Flame Trench, but it's worth pointing out, For them, mission success is achieving orbit. Obviously, landing the booster on the landing platform Vessel 1, also known as Jacqueline, which is now positioned in its place about 640 kilometers downrange. While that would be very nice, they still say the main objective is orbit, and if they can get the booster back on this first flight, well, that's just a bonus for them.
Yeah. And they, getting that blue ring into orbit is good, but everybody wants to know a success failure rate. What do you think? Everybody in the space community is like, this is their maiden flight. We know launching rockets is hard. If it was easy, everyone would do it. And usually on those first couple flights, there potentially are some issues. But New Glenn is a little bit different. They're working off all their New Shepard knowledge of launch and landings. And they've really been working on this thing behind the scenes a lot. Now, when it rolled out and went vertical for some of its tanking tests, we did see a couple of things that looked a little strange. It was tanked, it was detanked, it was lowered, it was raised. But now they seem like they've got everything squared away and they're ready to go.
That's what it seems like at this point. Again, all of the major integration is done inside the giant hangar. You can see it just next to me there, that big white square. It's actually massive. Besides mating the payload, that's also where all of the umbilicals, the lines, and everything that is on that transporter erector, the TE, is attached to the vehicle. They roll that out. There's a giant hinge and what are apparently the largest hydraulics that the company that made them has ever built to raise this 98-meter tall vehicle upright out at the pad. And it's been up there, and it's able to just hang out for now while they wait for the go for propellant load, which, a reminder, unlike SpaceX, which does their propellant load, 40 minutes in advance for something like Falcon 9, even compared to something like, let's say, Atlas V, which is about 6 hours ahead of launch where they begin fueling ops. This one, they will start fueling the vehicle about 4.5 hours before launch, and the entire thing takes about 3 hours total.
Yeah. Let's bring Adrian on this New Glenn conversation. I know he's a Blue Origin fan like the rest of us because rockets go up. We want to see that. Adrian, tell us some of the things that are different about this rocket. Like, we know some of the fuel and things like that, but with New Glenn and its maiden flight, what are some of the things we should be looking for on this maiden flight?
I have to say reusability. I mean, it's not that every day that you see a rocket debuting with a partially reusable booster. That's just very unusual. Actually, I think it's the first time that an orbital rocket tries to be reusable on the maiden flight. If you don't count the shuttle, of course. I will mention the shuttle here, which has, but it's a different kind of reusability. So that of course, but also I think it's very interesting because there's a bit of so we know part of the system already works and is proven, right? The BE-4 engines have worked on Vulcan. And from what we can tell so far, they have worked pretty flawlessly on Vulcan. So Blue Origin probably has some good understanding about that the BE-4 itself, the system, works in flight, which is a good thing, and probably gives them some confidence for the flight. And I feel in general, the vibe for this flight and the overall expectation is that Blue seems to be really prepared and wants to get all the way to orbit. They don't frame this as we will launch and see how far we go. They frame this as no, we want to go to orbit, we want to test this platform out, and the landing is kind of the bonus. So, yeah, absolutely interesting here. And I want to once again point out, as Sawyer said before, LC-36 just makes things look small. This launch pad is so extremely enormous that you're like, oh, that's a tiny, teeny New Glenn there in the middle. No, that rocket is an absolute beast. It's 98 meters tall, 7-meter diameter. It's not small.
Yeah, it's a big rocket, and we're hopefully going to see it launch in the next couple of days. And for those of you just joining us, we got news right before we went on that they are going to be pushing that New Glenn maiden flight to Monday. And I have some questions coming in about that already. Evan Richards wants to know, Sawyer, I'm going to come to you first. Why are they launching at 1 a.m.? We all want to see it during the day, but for some reason, they've decided to go in the middle of the night Eastern.
We do, and typically the answer is normally orbital mechanics. Obviously, orbit, not necessarily as super important with this one. It's not like, say, the Escapade mission, which was supposed to be the first flight, which eventually would be going onto a Mars trajectory. But at the same time, the other thing to keep in mind, besides obviously they want to still try and target a specific orbit and say, hey, we can pinpoint getting your satellite exactly where it needs to go. The other thing to keep in mind is that this is a brand new rocket. This is a debut flight. As we've seen from the attempts to get a static fire off or wet dress rehearsal timing, whichever it ends up being, it may take a little bit. And the last thing you want to do is close off a relatively busy airspace in the United States for 3-4 hours in the middle of, let's say, a rush hour time, the early morning, 7 to 10 a.m.s or the 4 to 6 p.m.s. There's a lot less flights going down that Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Orlando kind of corridor at 1 to 4 a.m. than there would be to, say, 1 to 4 p.m. So I'm sure that is playing a role in it as well, especially for a debut flight.
Yeah. On your screen, you can see some of the testing of the second stage there. That was they've got hydrogen in there. It's Adrian. Yeah, we'll come to you on this one. That second stage, we know the first stage is the liquefied natural gas and then oxidizer. But this upper stage, they decided to go with hydrogen and those BE3U engines. Isn't that harder to work with?
Well, initially they also planned it differently. Initially this was to be BE4U, the U in the engine stands for upper. But at some point they repurposed their plan and made it a BE3U, BE3 upper. Yes, hydrogen can be a bit tricky to work with because it's very much has the tendency to go basically through everything, especially valves, as SOS. But to be fair, if there's one company right now that works in space that has a lot of experience working with hydrogen, it would be Blue Origin, because their New Shepard vehicle is hydrogen based. So there's probably some very good knowledge about that kind of system inside of this company. Yes, New Shepard is a way smaller vehicle, but you're still working with the same thing. Hydrogen doesn't change because the rocket is bigger. It's still hydrogen. So there's a very good chance that they understand the advantages and disadvantages of hydrogen, and they decided to go that way. So yeah, I mean, I have confidence that New Shepard will help them nail that.
And again, they're going for their first catch attempts on Jacqueline, their landing vehicle out in the Atlantic, and that's why they push. Those seas have limitations and requirements, and they want to be really, really safe. And if anybody, I think, in my opinion, if anybody can land the first time, it's Blue Origin, taking that knowledge from New Shepard and putting it toward New Glenn. And I think we all agree on that. Let me jump over and say we've got a lot of store messages coming in. I want to say thank you guys for your support. We appreciate you watching everything that we put out and going out to our store and checking out some of the merch, and we're going to talk about Starship here in just a little bit, but the new Flight 7 patch is on pre-order. And go to shop.nasaspaceflight.com. There's a lot of great stuff out there. But I want to say thank you to a bunch of folks. Tim, great work, NSF. Thank you. Keep it up. We appreciate you, Tim. Everybody out there hitting the thumbs up and going and checking out the new calendars that are out there. Some amazing photography. Thank you, Mats, Mike, Alpha Tango, Sierra, gifting 50 Red Team memberships. We really appreciate you. And if you get one of those Red Team memberships, be sure to say thank you in chat. Adrian, I want to ask about the patch. I love the patches. And I wasn't able to. There goes a Disney cruise ship. I also love Disney cruise ships. I want to talk about the patch. I love the design. It's amazing. We have such great designs coming out, and this pre-order is available. It went up a couple days ago, and we have news about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to give everybody that is here a warning because people who are watching right now are probably very much involved with us halfway through our patch stock. I'm not even joking. We have never seen a situation like this before. They are flying off. The pre-orders are coming in like crazy. So I want to quickly give a heads up. As soon as we are running into these launch streams, both Blue Origin and Starship from SpaceX, there tends to be a lot more people paying attention to this. So I would maybe make my way over there and check that out, because otherwise, could end up with them selling out.
Yeah, and they look fantastic. You'll see, like, I'm wearing one of the Thrust collection shirts. I pre-ordered my Flight 7 patch just the other day, and some other merch, and it looks fantastic. And I can't say enough about the calendars are really, really cool. Both Max and D have covers on the calendars, and if you want to support those photographers, it's a great way to do it. So, are you wearing a Thrust shirt too? I can't see below.
I am wearing a Thrust shirt. And
Yeah,
also,
you're
you're
wearing one
talking
of the
about
Thrust
photographers who are on the calendar. I have some photos in there too. So just.
Oh, you
just
do?
saying.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah,
I didn't
of
know
course.
that. Thank you.
Absolutely. But yes, Thrust shirt. I'm wearing the RS-25 one. We also have ones for New Glenn and for Starship. We have BE4 and we have the Raptors in addition to Merlin.
As a store guy, I'm embarrassed of myself right now because I'm wearing a shirt that you cannot buy because it's the crew shirt, and it's like sorry, you cannot get that. And the only way to get that is become a crew member. So
Maybe someday.
yeah.
Maybe someday.
I didn't plan this. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's good.
It's all good. Remember, get your questions in at NASASpaceflight on the chat. We'll get to as many of them as we can. Daniel Green, thank you for becoming a PadRat member. James, thank you so much. NASA Spaceflight. We're going to get you your question in a little bit. $2 super chat, Lords of Random. Thank you very much. And yes, never forget the Atlantic Ocean. We don't control the weather. If we did, we'd have rocket launches every hour on the hour. So thank you for that support. And also, Craig, a store message. This one's for you, Sawyer. 100 pun tokens.
Ooh,
Sawyer.
thank you. I will make sure I put them to good use. Don't worry.
Don't worry. He will. He'll find a way. Anonymous store messages. Thank you for reviewing all the wonders of spaceflight, promoting space exploration. You know, it's what we do. We do this because we just love rocket launches. We're space nerds. We're part of this community, and it's a privilege to be on this side of the camera doing this with these guys. I can't say enough of it. Here's a question. Go ahead.
I'm quickly gonna chime in here because this is an implication we have not that much talked about yet, but with New Glenn slipping, you won't see the full force of the NSF team on Monday.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think if New Glenn goes all the way to the end of the window, we would have about 3 hours between New Glenn ending and our Starship coverage starting. So basically, if you like NSF, which I assume you do because you're here, get ready to watch a lot of that on Monday, because we will certainly be around a lot. And it's crazy how many puzzle pieces are right now at the Cape or in Boca and doing all these kind of things in preparation for what will probably go in history as the busiest day in NSF history.
So far.
And I absolutely agree. We have a lot of moving parts, and a lot of people are in Florida planning to go to Texas. They're in Texas. We are on our way to Texas. You're going to see, like as Adrian said, the full force of NSF for both the Starship, potential Flight 7, and the potential launch of New Glenn. Let's ask another question about New Glenn. And this is actually going to go, Adrian, I'm going to go to you, but we might come back to Sawyer on this one because that has to do with Jacqueline. Michael L. wants to know, will Jacqueline have cameras on it like some of the SpaceX barges? I assume yes. It would make sense to me. They want to catch it.
There's no way that it doesn't. Like, the question is more, will they show everything right when it happens? But I assume so, because Blue Origin has been, even in failure of New Shepard, very transparent about that. Like, props to them. For example, the last time New Shepard had an explosion event, they showed it. They didn't shy away from it. They didn't cut away from it. So I'm not sure about how you're feeling about this, Sawyer, but I feel like Blue Origin has been a company in the past that doesn't shy away from that.
I don't see why they wouldn't. Again, like you said, it's kind of the point of, it's a test flight. They know it's first ever flight. They know that there's the potential that something could happen during the landing. They've flat out said that's just a bonus objective, which is something SpaceX did back in the day too. I'm sure they're going to show it off. They want to show off, hey, look at our landing platform, look at our marine assets, despite what some people like Peter Beck might say about them. So I don't see why they wouldn't.
Yeah, and there's Jacqueline on the screen. Yeah, well, we suspect they'll have cameras, and like Adrian said, hopefully they'll show it. And if they show it, we get to experience it with you when they show us. There's a great question here about New Glenn 2, because they're calling this one NG1, right? Sawyer?
Yes,
This is NG1.
NG1.
Okay. So Randall Smith wants to know, where is Blue Origin with having a second New Glenn vehicle?
I mean, they have all the stuff in production. Their production site is at the Exploration Park facility, which is right across from the entrance to the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex in Florida. So they have a giant facility there where they've been building and testing other stages as well. They have plenty of flight hardware in there. As for Flight 2, I guess the real question is going to be, how well does Flight 1 go first? If everything goes as smooth as they're expecting it to, when would they then go for the second flight? I mean, we could probably see something as soon as, I would say, spring for a potential Flight 2. And then the other question also becomes, what would be your payload? Because if you try and then launch Escapade, keep in mind you have a Mars window to hit, so it would be cutting it very, very close to just hit the end of this window before having to wait to go in 2026. So it's a lot of questions up in the air, so we don't exactly know, and I think we'll know a lot more after this first flight.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And, it's a beautiful rocket to look at. I mean, it's just an incredible piece of machinery to look at, as opposed to Starship they were building in tents, right? Like Blue Origin, they built the factory first. They really wanted to do it using the knowledge that they have from New Shepard. And it's just a gorgeous rocket to look at, in my opinion. And I can't wait to see it fly.
Yeah, it will replace... So, my favorite rocket in terms of visuals sadly retired with the retirement of the Delta IV Heavy. And I always said, I think I said it also on that stream, New Glenn will be the rocket to replace that first place in terms of looks. I'm just in love of rockets that have kind of the same diameter all the way through and are just very symmetrical. And I also feel like the weight to length ratio of New Glenn just feels right. I'm not sure. I cannot describe it. Just some rockets feel aesthetically pleasing. And I think New Glenn is one of these rockets that just feels good to look at.
But it's not fully symmetrical, though, is it? Because technically you've got the taper at the bottom.
Yeah.
That's true.
But that's what makes it sexy, too.
Yeah,
it's the taper at the bottom.
Oops, sorry.
Love it.
Yeah, you have a 7-meter wide diameter vehicle here that then tapers to 8.5 meters. That's, again, just underneath the diameter of Starship. You're talking the same diameter as the core stage of SLS. So, I mean, yes, you're right. It is very sleek at the top, and then I guess it's got them curves on the bottom, which isn't a bad thing. And I'm not going to go any further than that.
I think, in a weird way, it's good when a rocket starts wider than it finishes. That's okay. It's cursed if it's the other way around. Looking at you, Ares 1.
Yes. Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah. Rocket on a stick.
Bad rocket.
So they have everything in place. We haven't seen any indication that they have a second rocket. We probably can make an educated guess they have one in production.
Oh, we have.
Oh, go ahead, Adrian.
We have. There's a factory picture from Blue Origin a few months ago. It's not in the asset document, so there's a pretty good chance that will be hard to get out here right now. But there's a picture from a few months ago, and you can see, I think Harry at some point counted through it, and there's for sure parts of at least a third booster. There's for sure significant hardware for a second booster. We have seen tanks in the TCAT and in the 2CAT for the second rocket. I think it's safe to assume that they have 3 rockets right now, including the current one, very far in production, potentially more.
Yeah, and it will be interesting to see if they can catch this one on that first flight, if they make changes to that in production already, or do they just go to the second one, they go to the third one. It'll be interesting to see. But New Glenn isn't the only rocket apparently trying to launch on Monday now. And let's switch gears and talk about Starship Flight 7. There's so much news coming out. If you've been watching Starbase Live, you know both vehicles have rolled to the pad. If you watched the Flame Trench or Starbase Update, This Week in Spaceflight, you're getting all of the news you are from NSF, and you know They have both vehicles out there. And let's talk about the wet dress rehearsal yesterday, where they brought it out, took a minute, but they stacked it, and then did a wet dress rehearsal, which they talked about on Flame Trench last night. Adrian, I'm going to come to you first. Did that look normal? Did it look fast? Did it look slow?
Yeah, looked pretty much normal. There was some potentially being a bit slower on the load side on one one tank, but overall that can happen. Starship has the ability to hold, but honestly, overall looked pretty much like, as weird as that sounds, the everyday Starship wet dress rehearsal. From what we can tell. There are some things, though, that are of interest right now. One thing is when you see right now next to me, the vehicle's unstacked. So our initial assumption was that inside of the Mega Bay, they installed the explosives for the flight termination system on Starship because there was this neat little explosive warn sign. So we assumed they would stack once, do a wet dress, and go. They have unstacked it this morning. And since then, they have not even worked on the FTS on the ship. Like, they are working on the TPS, on the thermal protection system. They are looking at all kinds of vents. It looks like they are doing final inspections, which is interesting after a wet dress, because usually SpaceX has been, I don't know, it feels a bit interesting. Also, we had two Indian notices in the Indian Ocean that have been pulled yesterday and have not been replaced yet. But from what we can tell, and that was what SpaceX is saying, they're still targeting Monday for the opening of their window and their launch. So overall, everything seems to be on track on Monday. However, they need to restack these vehicles, which is probably something for the early tomorrow somewhere area.
Yep, and we'll be here to cover it. And if you want to see all of it, become a supporter, become a pad rep member, become one of the other members, join our subscriber to YouTube channel. Like Ted B, thank you for becoming a pad rep member. We appreciate you supporting us like that. James with a store message, thank you so much. A lot of anonymous store messages about the calendars and how amazing they look. They're talking about Blue Origin. They're supporting these rocket launch providers and all of this great testing. People love to see that, and the photographers from NSF. Let's see, Rank Key, thank you so much for that support. We appreciate that $5 super chat. The possibility of multiple types of boosters landing this week is awesome. We agree. We absolutely agree. It's just going to be an amazing week. And we're only at the beginning of the year. Both of these launch providers are going to do some amazing stuff this year, and we're going to be here at NSF to bring it to you. Dave, thank you so much for that store message. Wish you could still get Test Flight 1 patch. Adrian, I'm looking at you. Test Flight 1 patch. Nope, not happening. They went gone. Scotty with a store message, go Flight 7. Absolutely. My first rocket launch was Flight 6, and I was just blown away. Absolutely blown away. No pun intended. Let's see, Jared, thank you for that store message. Love the great work. We love bringing it to you. So many great, look at the bring that patch back up. It's gorgeous. Go out to shop.nasaspaceflight.com and check that patch out. What were you saying, Adrian?
I was about to ask which everybody's Sawyer's first rocket launch was, but then I probably remember, well, it was probably the shuttle, right?
STS-130, absolutely,
Hey.
February of 2010. It was a night launch. It was supposed to be the last night launch of the shuttle program, but technically STS-131 came and took that next. But yeah, that was Endeavour, hence why part of my favorite shuttle.
April 20, 2023 for me for Starship Flight 1.
Oh, you got me beat. I've been watching them on NSF for years, so I was with you for all of these flights that you're talking about. But being able to go out there to Starbase and see Flight 6 was pretty cool. Let's see.
I got
Free
my
culture.
launch game. I'm only at 62 lifetime launches now, so I need to boost that, just saying.
Just kind of one up there, Free Potty. Like, I'm at 1.
The good old Sawyer
I
flex.
just want to
That
point
was the Sawyer
something
flex.
out though here really quickly. Adrian, you mentioned that they pulled the things from the Indian Ocean, the not Mars, right, or the warnings
Yes.
that they had out.
Yeah, the warnings.
You were the first one to report that, right? I saw you post that on X, and our team our amazing social teams are the ones that then re-xed it, reposted, retweeted, whatever you want to call it. So if you're not following the socials, you get the breaking news first there. So check them out. We're on X, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, TikTok, as long as it's still in the US for a couple more weeks, all that. But yeah, I mean, we're breaking Starship news there.
Yeah, be sure to sign up for all of them. It's a great place to get all of your news, like as Sawyer said. And here on YouTube as well. Thank you, Free Culture, for becoming a Bad Rat member. Guys, it's going so fast. I can't keep up with it. Adrian, what were you saying?
I want to quickly address also these NOTAMs, these not Mars, or these notices that are going away, because there's so many different ways how you can tackle why that could happen. And I try to the navigational warnings. Thank you, Neat Pizza. Because on the one hand, it could be a pull because of its delay, but then you ask the question, why only these two? So then you also have adjustment pulls. Sometimes they pull something and then reissue it with a slightly different coordinate. Then it's weird that it's two at the same time, because what happened that both of them need adjustment. Then you're looking at maybe they adjust the time a bit, maybe they got the time a bit wrong, but then there's a third one that they didn't pull and didn't adjust. So the overall message here is we have no idea why they did this. They could also be a situation where they discovered they don't need them. So it's honestly a very interesting thing if they will pop up again, or if they're just staying there for now. And to be fair, and I'm not a weather expert here, but weather in Boca is not optimal. It's not horrible, but we have some wind gusts. We have some of these kind of things. So that are watch items. So it's not out of the question that Starship doesn't launch on Monday.
Yeah, we're going to be watching really close. I mean, we've got NSF folks everywhere, weather photographers just everywhere, looking and trying to figure out, when is everything going to go? When that's why we bring it to you. There's Adrian's tweet right there. Is it still called a tweet? Is it an X post?
I think the official language, according to the X Style Guide, is X post. I also want to quickly shout out Neat Pizza, who has spotted this actually first. It is always a person that is behind the scenes spotting a lot of things first, and is very, very keeping up to date on both New Glenn and Starship. So shout outs to Neat Pizza.
Yeah, he always in the background. Who's amazing.
Also, Neat Pizza pointing out that other navigational warnings, one for the Gulf of Mexico and one for the Indian Ocean, were also adjusted last night to be 1 day longer. Again, that doesn't indicate anything. We're not saying that the date has changed or anything. As of right now, everything still remains on track. You can see the clocks up above my head. The NET clock for Starship, that means no earlier than, is still counting down to Monday. The New Glenn one, that is L-, that is the launch minus time. So there are ignoring any holds in the countdown, the actual liftoff is in 31 hours. None of those have changed in the last 20 minutes here. Those are still as planned. Trust me, you'll know otherwise if anything changes. But just noting the coincidence of those.
I think you could see it, by the way, on the wet dress. The wet dress, because I see a lot of people, I also saw in chat, and I see a lot of people also on X and everywhere asking, like, how late can they stack? Well, look at that wet dress. They stacked fairly late in the evening and still got a wet dress rehearsal out the day after. So the answer to this is fairly late. Even if they have not stacked by, I don't know, noon tomorrow, that doesn't mean it's out of the question. They could probably stack that thing at like the late evening somewhere tomorrow and still be fine for a launch attempt. So that's just something we learned from this wet dress that is, for me, very interesting, how late they can stack this, and it's fine.
Yeah, and for folks that don't know, if you've been watching NSF for a while, you know that the things that are going on with this Starship and the changes in it. Sorry, I'm going to come to you. What makes this one special? What makes this one different from Flight 6? We've seen Starships go, explode, and land in the Gulf of Mexico. What makes Flight 7 different, and why should people be excited about this one?
Well, a couple of reasons. First off, this isn't your ordinary Starlink, because on board are actually Starlink mass simulators. There are 10 of them. They will try and deploy them, actually, in a suborbital trajectory. This one, again, not going for a full orbit, still going for that suborbital trajectory with a hopeful controlled landing in the Indian Ocean afterwards for it. So that's one thing. And then the other big thing, of course, is that this is the first Block 2 variant of the ship itself. So you may notice that the position of the flaps at the top, which were kind of more in line, are now up and angled a bit. It does kind of look strange if you're not used to it, but I honestly think it looks a lot more sleek to it. So that is part of the design change. This is something they've been talking about doing for a couple of years, and obviously they've learned on the improvements as they went with the first 6 flights of Starship up till now. But the hope is to be able to deal with that re-entry heating and disperse it better. They're also testing different types of tiles on the thermal protection system to see, all right, maybe these tiles that are actually cooled will work better. Maybe these metallic tiles will work better. All of these different things that they're testing. But the main big thing is that this is the first flight of the Block 2 Starship.
Yep. And Adrian, we saw some things sticking out of the ship that we haven't seen on previous versions. What are those?
These are kind of like aerodynamic simulators of potential catch pins. So if you imagine a catch pin sticks out, right? That changes your plasma flow, that changes the way your aerodynamics are behaving a bit different. So what SpaceX is doing is they have attached kind of dummies to this to check all of this. I want to point out the fact that they have explicitly said these are not structural parts. So that means you cannot lift them using that, or like they are not functional. They are mainly to understand all of the aerodynamic and plasma implications of this, which is interesting because they use this flight like this feels very much like a very we test out things and see what happens flight. Because as Sawyer said, there are gaps in this TPS. They are literally like TPS missing. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see a full re-entry on this. And honestly, that's probably fine, because they will learn still things from this and what are the limits of this vehicle. But look at that. Look at on the tiles there. That's tiles missing, and there's just the ablative material below that. And they do this on purpose. I mean, they're kind of playing with fire here, quite literally, and see what happens. So honestly, my prediction is this thing might not make it through re-entry, and I will not even be sad about it. It just happens.
Well, they've changed a lot, and they've updated their website. You could see on the screen the little bumps where the little black circles down at the bottom are those lifting pins. So when you see the chopsticks or the 2-point lifting jig, grab those. That's where the pins lock in. But you can see where it's kind of chamfered around that. So the chopsticks arms will slide up and over those and then hit those pins. Now, not these pins specifically. Again, as Adrian said, these are simulators. These aren't structural. We know from Elon's tweets these are going to go. This one's going to the Indian Ocean, and potentially on the next flight, it's going to go. They're going to potentially go for a catch. But it's interesting to see the iterative design, how we all thought, oh, it could deploy and this and that. And here you go. They just stick something out the side of the ship and coat it in TPS tiles. It's going to be really interesting to see. They also have upgraded the number of cameras they have on this ship, right? So we're going to potentially see some views on this flight we've never seen before. Engine bay camera, we saw it last time for the reflight, but they could put cameras anywhere. I'm looking for that payload bay dispenser cam, right, guys?
Yep,
that's going to be the big one.
It's right below it. There's a camera looking upwards to the payload bay, so we will literally see Starlink potentially shooting out of this pest dispenser in space. And I really hope that one of these Starlinks has a camera attached, and we see a Starship from the outside in space. I beg you, SpaceX, please have one camera on one of these Starlinks.
I would love that.
That would be amazing. Oh, that would be the best.
I mean, I'm also spoiled because we had the end of the shuttle program where they started doing the rendezvous pitch maneuver. where they did a full 360 underneath the ISS with the Earth below. I mean, we need one of those with Starship, just saying.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And some of the questions that I see, and we're going to thank a bunch of people here. So many people with their super chats and their red team memberships, and I'm going to get to their questions. You guys are bringing them in so fast. It's so hard to get to all these amazing questions. But I want to thank a bunch of people, and then we'll go to the next question. So Fred, thank you so much for becoming a PadRat member. We appreciate it. We can't do this without you guys. Seriously, everything you do, from hitting a thumbs up button there on your screen, you see that pin we're talking about. They just bolted it on and wrapped it in TPS. So they probably point a camera at it. We'll see what happens on re-entry. It's going to be fun. Chromatic Order, thank you so much for that super chat. You said if Starship, for some reason, are not able to deploy Starlinks, I guess you mean, not able to deploy some of the Starlinks, how would that affect the re-entry? I don't think it would affect it at all. What do you guys think about that? We'll talk real quick. We'll get back to this. What do you think, Adrian? If they don't deploy those?
I mean, it changes the weight difference a bit, but I bet you there's some sort of software that adapts to that. It's mainly just weight difference, and it's like center of mass that changes a bit. But honestly, we are talking about a company that have landed over 300 rockets in the ocean. I think they are very good at adaptive software.
Yeah. Sorry, real quick. What do you think?
Same thing. I mean, there's got to be a way for it to be able to adjust given the mass on it. And again, keep in mind, like when we get these timelines from SpaceX, even for Falcon 9, it says that, all times are approximate. And that's because it is onboard computers that are doing the real-time calculations. So if, let's say Falcon 9 MECO is different by a couple of seconds, it's taking into consideration, where the fuel is, how much fuel it's burned through, any potential sloshing, any potential under or over performance. I'm sure it's the same thing with Starship, that they could account for it.
And they talked about upgrading the avionics, and maybe that was part of it, because now that they're putting mass in the payload, potentially they had to update the software to say, hey, if that weight and balance is off just a little bit, you've got to correct for this on reentry. They also said that their reentry profile is going to be a little bit steeper. They're pushing this TPS to the limit with their test tiles and so on. It's going to be interesting to see.
I mean,
Lords of Random. Oh, go ahead, Adrian.
Sorry, I'm just like, because we are still on TPS, as crazy as it sounds, there could be a reality where in a year from now, there's no black TPS tiles on a Starship anymore. Because we know they are testing this, what's the exact wording? The cooling using small little gaps.
Active
cooling. Yeah. And if that works, and we know they have in the past very much tinkered and kind of flirted with that idea, so maybe after this flight they're like, yep, we were right, TPS was really the wrong idea, let's get active cooling on every single vehicle. So there is a path here, there's a reality where Starship doesn't have any tiles in a year from now, and the chances are not zero, otherwise they wouldn't test. If the chances is zero, they wouldn't test this.
And Adrian,
let's see what happens with Stokes.
What is?
What's the best part? No part.
No part.
I mean, it would be very much a SpaceX thing to test out a TPS for a year or two, then be like, it doesn't work.
Yeah, let's save 10 tons and put that into mass to orbit. But I would say let's see what happens with Stoke's second stage when they bring that back, because that's actively cooled, right, with their aerospikes. So that'll be interesting to watch. Let's see, where was I? Lords of Random, thank you so much for that super chat. Said it before, say it again. Was Block 1B full stack? No. Okay, thank you for that. Starship Block 1B is no, this one's beautiful. No. Look at this thing. I mean, it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. Let's see. Space Pope, thank you for gifting those red team memberships. You're awesome. RC Horseman, thank you. 20 red team memberships. Amazing. Guys, you guys are just overwhelmingly generous. So many store mentions about Flight 7 patch, about the calendars. Thank you, guys. Daniel, thank you for becoming a Capcom member. You get so much behind the scenes, what's going on with NSF, everything that we do as a Capcom member. Let's see, who else? Gosh, there's just so many. You guys are bringing it so fast. I can't keep up with it. That's the good thing. That's the fun part. And of course, the Flight 7 patch is right over my face. It's perfectly spaced. Tyler, $10 super chat. You talked about Stoke Space. With Stoke Space, Rocket Lab building their bigger reusable rockets, what does the market look like for New Glenn in the long run, considering how little Falcon Heavy has been used? That's a great question. Sawyer, I'm coming to you first. That is a fantastic question. Read your crystal ball.
Let's see. The crystal ball said no. One thing I think that New Glenn really has going for it is payload capacity and payload space. You're talking a heavy lift vehicle, which, yeah, sure, there's things like Vulcan that are out there. There's things like Falcon Heavy that are out there. But you're talking a 7-meter diameter vehicle. You're talking the largest fairings that have ever been built up to this point for spaceflight. The amount of volume that you have for payload is crazy. This is something that, let's say, imagine you're the U.S. military going, we want this really large, big spy satellite, but we don't have the shuttle's payload bay anymore. I mean, imagine being able to launch something like James Webb, even for science, on something like that. Talk about these large payloads that you can get into a medium Earth orbit or even a geostationary transfer/geo orbit. That is huge. That is something that other vehicles that are in the market right now cannot do. Is that something Starship can do in the future? Maybe. But for right now, you're talking a vehicle with some reusability. At this point, I don't know why there are companies that are using non-reusable, but that's another story. So you've got a partially reusable vehicle. You have a large amount of volume and mass that it can take to orbit. That's its selling point.
Mm-hmm. Adrian, what do you think, real quick?
Fully agree with Sawyer there. Payload space, especially. We have seen Falcon Heavy. They're developing literally a bigger fairing right now, which we have seen in the last few weeks, because they have noticed this fairing is kind of a bit too small for what we want to do with this rocket. It's a problem that Falcon Heavy had. Secondary note here, the Space Force and other bigger governmental providers tend to do contracts that are 60-40 or 50-50 between launch providers, because they want to have redundancy outside of a single launch provider. Right now, these contracts tend to go 60% SpaceX, 40% ULA. That's a lot of splits we have seen in the past. Let's just say, while I don't expect New Glenn to challenge the SpaceX dominance completely in the next few years, if I would be one of the companies right now that are looking for these place 2 slots, I would be very much worried if a second very capable rocket is coming online from a different company, because that very much puts everybody that has not done a reusability under pressure.
Yeah, better. That's our motto. And that's why we're here. And that's why we thank you guys so much for your support. When you become a member, when you subscribe, when, like Abram Pusada, thank you so much for becoming a PadRat member. As you look at becoming a member of NSF, you get so much behind the scenes. If you want to see what we see behind the scenes, become a member. And it's incredible live behind the scenes for the launches, all the work that goes into it, the setting of the cameras, all that stuff. It's pretty amazing. And I can tell you, from a guy who's only been here with NSF a couple months, I was on the outside looking in. I had no idea, absolutely no idea the amount of work that goes into the coverage that NSF brings you. And it's because of all the people that join us and hit that thumbs up button and do the super chats like Flawed Perspective. Thank you for that $10 Canadian. Just finished a Saturn V build. You're 3D printing everything. Yes. Where do I go to make an order? I would love more 3D printed rockets in my office. I don't have enough. We appreciate it. This is going to be the best week ever. I agree with you, David. This is going to be the best week ever. And
imagine the third biggest launch in your week is a moon mission. Like, there's next to Starship and New Glenn, we also have Falcon 9 launching the Firefly play. Oh my god, I'm blanking on the name. Sawyer, help me. Yeah. Thank you.
Blue Ghost, and you've got, Hokuto R2 as well on there?
Yep.
Yeah, so you've got
moon missions on the same
moon landers that are launching from Historic Launch Complex 39A. And that is less than 48 hours after the scheduled launch of Starship. So you're talking New Glenn, Starship, lunar landers in the matter of, what, 72 hours?
Yep.
Yeah.
And a
It's-
Starlink.
Yeah, and
It's gonna
Starlink
be
Group
amazing.
11-8 and Starlink Group 12-4. No.
It's-
But
We're going to be busy, guys.
yeah, I can
We're
already
gonna
announce you that there will not be a dedicated stream for the Starlink mission on Monday, because that's while we are already live with Starship. So you can probably
Yeah.
expect that we will roll that coverage into the Starship coverage.
You know, it's funny. Adrian and I were talking behind the scenes. We were like, "Oh no, when is everybody going to sleep? What's going to happen?"
Never.
And we just keep saying, it's going to be so much fun. We're going to be up for 24 hours. We're going to watch all these rockets potentially launch, potential catch, potential landing on a drone ship. I mean, there's just so much going on, and we're all going to have a great time doing it. We're going to be so tired. We're going to be punch drunk. Don't miss those streams. They're going to be amazing. I'd rather be flying an X-wing. Thank you for that super chat. On a scale of Starship to Relativity, how do you? Sorry, I'm going to come to you this one. How blue do you think the external plume will be?
Origin.
Yeah,
So-
how blue?
yeah.
Blue Origin. I
Yeah,
figured you'd go there.
I had to.
We
That
got to
was
get the
terrible.
puns in. I got to get the puns in. I knew something was coming.
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. I mean, I think it's going to be somewhere in between, because you are talking, again, methane slash, as Blue Origin calls it, LNG, the liquefied natural gas. So I think there's still going to be some other elements in there that aren't going to make it super, super blue, but I think it's going to be bluer than what we're used to seeing for Starship, which is more of that pinkish blue. So I think it's going to be somewhere in between. From what we've seen, even from the CERT-1 mission, the first flight of Vulcan, you had the solid rocket boosters on the side, and even that was decently blue, especially as those boosters burned out and separated. So I don't think it's going to be as bright as that original Relativity one, but it's going to be more blue, I think, than Starship.
Even potentially at 1 a.m. Eastern, those 7 BE-4 engines are going to light up Florida. It's going to be pretty amazing to watch.
I
It's going
think
to be amazing to watch.
I think right now my ranking of potential blueness of methane rockets is least blue is Suke-2, then probably Starship, then Vulcan and New Glenn, and then Relativity, in that order. That's my expectation of blueness, which is
I just
the
want to see
weirdest
Mega Mach
scale ever.
diamonds. I just want to see the Mega Mach diamonds. It's my favorite thing. I love it. Spirit Wolf, thank you so much, gifting 5 Red Team memberships. And again, you guys are being so generous today. I'm way behind. I'm just going to tell you, I'm way behind. So thank you to everybody. All your store messages, going out and checking out everything on the store. I am so far behind. I'm going to get yelled at. Miko Original, thank you for gifting those Red Team memberships. It's amazing how generous you guys are today. W Dubs, thank you, $10 super chat Canadian. We got that boom, boom, pow, whatever that means. But thank you. We're going to have lots of that when we launch these rockets, potentially. And again, if you didn't know and you just joined us, Blue Origin's New Glenn, they're having some wave problems in the Atlantic, and they are now targeting Monday as well. And you can see, as Sawyer likes to say, above my head, you've got New Glenn. There it is. That is the L means launch. And they are still targeting 31 hours to a launch for New Glenn 1. And then, of course, Starship no earlier than 47 hours from the opening of their launch window. So it's just going to be a busy couple of days. We are going to have way too much fun not having sleep doing these launches. By the way, I was remiss. Real quick, Adrian, I was remiss. You know, I thanked you guys for being here. But I forgot to mention all the people in the background that are doing the work. You know, we've got Kevin Michael Reed, the man, the myth, the legend, pressing buttons. Jay Keegan with them as well. We've got Chris doing a great job. And again, the three of us, you know, we just sit here and talk. We've got the easy job. They're bringing up all those assets and all those great camera shots, all those people in the background that do it. So I really, really appreciate all you guys, and we're going to thank them here in a minute. Adrian, what were you going to say?
Just quickly, as a note of programming, because people might be interested when we go live for all the kind of things. Everything should be scheduled at this point on the NASASpaceflight YouTube channel. Again, check the socials. If things slips, we will announce it there. But we are looking at 4 hours coverage for New Glenn. So 4 hours before the first T0, we will go live with New Glenn. And again, I want to quickly point out the fact that we will have Harry Stranger on that stream, who is probably one of the most informed people about New Glenn outside of Blue Origin. That Harry really pays attention to this rocket. Then we have Starship. Starship, we start our coverage probably around 10 hours before the launch with our usual stakeout, where we will completely make sure that you are all the way updated throughout the day. We will check the road closures, everything. So just as a there it goes. There are all the streams. That's the stakeout, the launch, the New Glenn launch, and tomorrow we're gonna have another countdown to launch episode, which is happening around 3 p.m. Eastern.
It's going to be busy for us, but we wouldn't have it any other way, right, guys?
Absolutely.
This is what we do. Put rockets on camera and watch them go, and I love it. Absolutely every one of them. And having Harry on that is going to be huge. That's going to be big. So pay attention to that one. That Blue Origin stream is going to be fun. These guys do a lot of research in the background about it. Can we call it Countdown to Life? I like that. Adrian, countdown to launch tomorrow. Don't miss that one out. Don't miss that one tomorrow. We are going to be busy. And if you need more information, you can go, obviously, to check out those streams that are already scheduled. Go out to NASASpaceflight.com. Check out everything that's there as well.
Adrian, don't you need Countdown to Life featuring squirrels?
Oh, yeah, you will see sound in that show. That's the to finish the Adrianism bingo. That's where we are.
Well, don't forget, if you want to hear Adrian actually just speaking native German and not butchering Englishisms, we now have added tracks that are going into our Starbase kind of updatey videos that we used to call dailies. So.
Yep,
yes.
absolutely. We are. That was fun. I recorded the one that came out later today, a few hours ago. So that's one again. If you want to hear me talk German or Alex talk Spanish, because Alex is doing the Spanish line, we now have German, Spanish, and of course Das doing English on every of these Starbase, not dailies, but update shows.
Are you guys as laid back as Das? Because I see him just going, and that's a ring, leaving the ring yard, going over there to Massive. But you do it in German and Spanish.
The problem is German takes a lot more words to say things, I feel like, than English. So, I feel like the overall sentences are longer. And that always results in me, being very... I need to talk fast. Otherwise, I won't get everything in I want to say. And I still don't get everything in I want to say. And I want to point out that Das has made the rule that you're only allowed to one-take these. So basically, I'm not getting any chance. I'm just sitting there, play the daily, look at, punch record, and I just have to record. So the rule is, Alex and I don't get second chances. It's just, you have to talk, and you have to finish it like that.
From a voiceover guy, believe me, it's not as easy as it sounds to do the one take. We call it one take Jake, and it is really difficult. Where's Jake?
That's what I was looking for. I'm like, where's my cat? Yeah.
Yeah. So kudos to you guys for doing it in your native language. Has been bringing that to the folks at NSF. I know that was huge. And that was Jack that actually said, hey, you know what we should do? And we were all like, that's a fantastic idea. We should do that. And we did. So it's awesome. I don't speak German, but I listened to it in German.
There was a 10-second silence in the meeting after Jack said that, where everybody was like, yeah, why don't we do that? That's a great idea.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to say thank you to everybody and that brought up store messages and new members. And thank you guys so much for, supporting what we do here at NSF. And again, I say this all the time. We can't do it without you. We would still do it because we love it. But everything you see can't happen without you guys joining us for these streams and really just supporting everything we do. And it's a ton of fun. Lots of patches going out. And again, as Adrian said earlier, the Flight 7 patches, get out there and pre-order those because they're going really fast. Did you say we were halfway through, Adrian? Is that right?
Halfway through, yeah.
Yeah.
And the tendency is that they start to fly out even faster once the launch stream has started, of course, because people get hyped and they order patches.
Yeah, and everybody's looking for Jake Sawyer in the chat. Where's Jake? Jake is off doing Jake things.
He's being a cat, so he's probably sleeping.
Shazbert, Todd Bott, thank you for becoming a Red Team member. And again, if you want to see a lot of these behind the scenes, go check out all of the available memberships at NSF. And yes, you know, there was a conversation. I'm going to go on a tangent here. There was a conversation the other day about Klingon and how none of us speak Klingon. And I hate to say it, I speak Klingon. I'm such a Star Trek nerd. I'm totally putting that out right now. So go, Jay. Say what you want. I posted it in chat. I totally speak Klingon. I love it. Guys, thank you for joining us today. It's Countdown to Launch. Sawyer, thank you for joining us. Are you ready for these rockets to go?
I think we are going a bit.
No, we're going to keep going, but I'm just,
Why not?
I'm just
Yeah,
saying.
They
We have
extended
so much
us.
more
Let's keep
still
going.
to talk about.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's get to some of these questions. I got 1,000 questions for you guys that we can talk about it. Let's find a great. There you go. There's one right there. We talked about it a little earlier. We'll go straight to Kirk. Why is it destacked? We talked about it a little earlier. Let's answer that question again. Adrian, why did they destack after the wet dress?
That's a very good question at SpaceX. Looking at it right now, they're still inspecting the TPFs. Like, if you look at this direction here right now, you can see like a lift below that flap or at that area of the flap, and that is a TPS inspection. So I'm getting more and more the feeling they're doing some sort of inspections. The only question for me is this planned? Was this a planned destack and a planned inspection? Or did something come up that forced them to do a destack? Because that has all kinds of different implications. They were fairly fast with rolling out the ship stand, and they were also like it felt very planned. But so yeah, I feel like it's most likely was planned, but again, we don't know. There's not a live ticker.
Yeah.
There's not a. I want a ULA like a live blog. So for the people that are are with us here in space coverage, ULA has this nice live blog before launch where they update by like, hey, we have done this right now because of this. I want this for Starbase. It would probably like be 50 notifications in a minute. We're like, we did this because of the.
Yeah. And as Need Pizza in the back channel says, they didn't move the transfer stand, the transport stand. So they more than likely were planning to do this anyway. If they were going to leave it up there, they'd have rolled it back to the build site. Let's see. Douglas, store message says, I have all of the patches, and I'm getting all the patches you create for Starship flights, and I want to go to Sawyer. Do you have all the patches, Sawyer?
I do not know. I'm
Neither
very
do I.
bad about collecting the NSF ones. I have one, all right, Sawyer Flex. I have one years ago at each launch. SpaceX used to hand out patches for the mission. Following CRS-7, they would hand out the patches after a successful launch. So I have some of those in my collection. Obviously, as Starlink flights became every 2 to 3 days, they stopped doing those. But I need to be better about collecting NSF stuff, besides shirts.
Adrian, I know you have all the patches.
Yeah, usually I get the first one that ships and orders because so creating a shop system and creating pre-orders is a complicated thing. So what I usually do is I do a test order to check if it works, and that's usually is the first order that goes through for any given patch. Not for this one. I want to point. This is a funny story I can quickly tell. So sometimes I set it like in the middle of the night where nobody would see it. I have to like set this patch public in the middle of the night and experiment a bit in the store. And I do that and usually nobody spots it. This time somebody did and ordered the first 2 patches while I was still experimenting with it. So I will not say your name, but shout out, you really sniped me there. Because I suddenly like I was in the middle of the night working on it, and suddenly I get a notification of like an order. I'm like, huh?
There you go.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
That just means that more people need to go to shop.nasaspaceflight.com at midnight to see what Adrian's messing around with.
There you go. That's exactly right. I have a similar story. It's terrifying when somebody buys one of your prototypes. When my first book was coming out and it was being published, I wanted it to hold it in my hand so bad. I printed the draft. I had one made, and then I took it to a show to say, "Hey, everybody, this is coming out." And my daughter gave it away as a prize. I was terrified. I literally tracked down the person she gave it to and like bought it back from her. It was so bad. And it's when someone buys a prototype, you're like, "Oh God, I hope it works. Oh God." But I know your fear.
Yeah, it's like the patch that we show right now everywhere is, for example, also the prototype. Like the company we work with that produces these patches, they literally put it on a scanner, scan it to us, and so we can say like, "Hey, this is how the patch looks." This is, by the way, how the patch looks. And that scan is what we use for these kind of like. Otherwise, it's not existing yet. They're producing it, so it's a thing. And again, I want to quickly point out. Otherwise, it will result in a lot of store questions. It's a pre-order. That says it in title. Pre-order means it's not being ready to ship now because SpaceX is not taking any breaks on the Starship launch cadence. So expected to ship, we estimated to ship in February. And once that happens, you will get a notification. We will update you on socials. We'll make sure you know. Just pointing that out to reduce the amount of questions we get to the store about that.
Let's talk about that Blue Origin stream one more time. Zahara Mega wants to know: will there be a live stream from Blue Origin? Sawyer, I'll come to you.
I'm sure there will,
What do you
but
think?
we'll be live well before them. So if you want to, because they go live after the tanks are full, we will be going through tanking. We start 30 minutes after they begin fueling here at the T-minus 4 hour mark. So check out the NASA spaceflight stream here at NSF. We will be on. Before that, we will be going all the way through as they continue to load up the vehicle with the liquefied natural gas, with the liquid oxygen, with the hydrogen for the second stage. So yeah, stick with us first. We got you covered.
It always comes down a bit to the fact that rocket companies have to dumb down what they say a bit, I think, in live streams, because they have all these kinds of different stakeholders they have to address, and some of them have no clue about rockets, so they basically have to start as, "So this is a rocket." We have the luxury of not doing that, so if you want to have in-depth commentary, this is probably the better place to be.
We reach out and answer your questions too.
That's exactly right. This is definitely the place to be. Everybody's going to have their thing, but NSF is where I've been watching for years, and we hope you join us as well. We're looking forward to it, and it's going to be busy. We are going to be so busy. Oh my gosh, and fun, right, Adrian? We keep saying it's going to be so much fun. Let's see. Yeah, and an NSF marathon. That's exactly right. Pat Lance, that's exactly right. It's going to be a marathon.
Yeah, I'm also looking at who's going to be on the launch broadcasts, and it's going to be fun.
Sawyer, Phil wants to know when you're coming. I was hoping you were coming this time. When you're coming to Flight 8 with me, right? I'm going to come pick you up. We're coming to Flight 8. Let's go.
Yeah, my health wasn't quite ready yet. So, yeah, we're hopefully then for Flight 8 is the plan. Hopefully it goes around my birthday, which is mid-February. So we'll plan for that.
Well, anytime I'm in. Let's go. I want to go to a rocket launch, and I want to go with everybody. I want everybody
come
to
over
go.
to the Cape then. Come down here. See.
It's a
see
shorter drive for me. I'll be there. Let's see. Oh, there's a lot of good questions. Man, you guys have so many great questions. Let's see. SpaceX go for a ship catch, presumably. Yeah, that's a good one. Ian Hamilton, great question. Let's see. Oh, that's the Sawyer question. Hang on. I want that one. Wait, where'd it go? There it is. When SpaceX goes for a ship catch, presumably will they have to drop the booster into the ocean? Adrian, I'm going to come to you first. Do you think they're going to catch the booster and then set it down, drive it over? Because, again, we talk about the ship's going to be in orbit, so they got time. What do you think?
if they want to go for one cycle, so one orbit, there's most likely they have to very quickly put it on a stand or the OLM and then make the chopsticks ready again. The question is, when are you phasing out? Because if you're talking about orbital dynamics, basically every single rotation on you do with the Starship, you will translate a bit away from bokeh. Now, Starship has cross-range capabilities, and there's also some ways how you can adjust your orbit to mitigate that. But every single orbit, it will get harder until it gets easier again. So, if they don't do it on the first rotation, can they still do it on the second? I don't know. That's a very SpaceX-specific question. On the third, fourth, fifth, it's gonna be harder again. So, it's gonna be interesting. We have seen them on the catch being very quick about it and moving it quick, so it seems like they are practicing moving this fast. So maybe that's their way how they want to solve this problem. But they have to move fast. If they go for a full rotation, they have about 60 to 90 minutes, depending on how high their orbit is, until that ship is coming back.
Well, they've got to bring the booster down and detank what's in it. They've got to safe the booster before they can move it. So do you think they can do that in an hour? We'll see. They get faster. Or they could leave the ship, and then we're talking about orbital trajectories, and we need Ryan Weber and Alex on this to talk about all that stuff. One of the things that we talked about earlier, Sawyer, was the differences in this ship, and there's some interesting things about the engine number 314 that flew on Flight 5. Do you think that one's going to perform at all?
Well, here's the thing. We don't officially know. Everything is indicating that it is towards it. We do know that there is a booster an engine, that is being reflown on this booster from the booster that was caught on Flight 5. So everything indicates that it's engine number 314, the one that had the pi on it because it's the number of pi. I don't think there's going to be any issues with it, if we're being perfectly honest. I mean, any of the reflown engines. Sure, they experienced some extra heating, as we saw things glowing on the underside of the booster during the re-entry portion. But, I mean, I'm sure they tested some of them out at McGregor, and I wouldn't be surprised if everything goes perfectly fine with it. And I do hope, indeed, that it is the actual 314 engine when we get that 100% confirmed.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. They have, the Raptor engines, these Raptor 2s. The last couple of flights looked really good, and we're all anticipating Raptor 3s. And I'm sure there's a question in this long list of questions that I have when they're going to use the Raptor 3s. Watching that reuse engine is another milestone for this flight. Here's another one. Here's another question. When do you think Starship will be reused? By the way, Dan, thank you for that question about Raptor 314. I forgot to mention that was a great question. We're all talking about reusability for both New Glenn and Starship, and the question comes up: when do you guys think Starship will be reused, or when do you think booster? Adrian, I'll come to you first. They're obviously going to try to reuse a booster first, I assume. When do you think this is all going to happen?
I think booster fairly soon. I think booster is very much coming. I wouldn't be surprised on if somewhere in the range of Flight 9 to 12 or somewhere in there, they will start to reuse a booster. Like, that doesn't seem to be out of the question. It's very much, I would even go as far as say, if they want to reach their launch cadence they have aimed for this year, they have to start reusing boosters. Otherwise, they cannot build a booster every 2 weeks right now. That's not possible. On ship, I mean, ship catch, I still think ship catch is the bigger deal than booster catch. It has way more unknowns. It is way more weird. I could see them catch a ship on the second, third attempt. I don't think it will be the first, but that's maybe me. Although I think there's a good chance this year somewhere, if they somehow hold their launch cadence they want to, both ship and booster will be started to be reused.
Yeah. Sawyer, what do you think?
I'm trying to remember what I was thinking on the flame trench the other day. I mean, if we're talking the booster, I think we could see that as soon as next booster. I don't know if they would maybe refly this one. I think potentially the next one. But it's definitely going to be this year, first half of this year.
Mm-hmm. So there's a question about that when we were talking about taking the booster off the stand when it lands. Thank you for the $5 super chat and a great question, Drew Nar. And I think he meant Starship has more cross range than Shuttle? Question mark. Let me say that right. Starship has more cross range than Shuttle. They could barely deorbit in one orbit. So what if they left it up there? What if they just left Starship up there? Detank the booster, get it off the OLM, do a couple checkouts maybe, and then bring it down and get those orbital trajectories right. Sawyer, what do you think?
I mean, I think that's what they're going to end up having to do early on, at least, is let it stay up there, do some thermal testing while it's up there, see how it handles orbital day and orbital night and the constant changes between them, maybe try out some engine firings, test out different apogees, different perigees, see how it maneuvers, and then maybe go for that landing. I mean, in terms of which has more cross range, yeah, Starship, I believe, has more cross range than Shuttle does. I mean, you're talking not necessarily a flying brick, something that's actually designed to fly aerodynamically and not have to do some sharp S-turns to slow down and then brake at the last minute and then do a little circle to line up for the runway. So I could see that being something that they do, especially early on, give them time to safe the booster, test it out, and then once they're used to, they know that they can safely deorbit Starship, then have it come back in.
Yeah. Yeah, Drew, I got your back. It was Starship, but appreciate your support. Thank you so much. On one of the shots that we saw earlier of Starship, we saw a black patch with no thermal protection system in there. Do we know what that is, Adrian? Phil wants to know, what is that black square? I know we know it's between the lifting pins and the potential catch pin.
It's
You know
paint.
what that is?
It's, I know this is a boring answer, but it's paint.
Yeah.
That
means we don't know. It's paint.
Yeah. I mean, could that paint have some properties? Is it some maybe like anti-corrosive or something? Yeah, maybe. But we saw them spray painting it. It's paint. That's the answer.
They just painted it today, right?
Yeah, that's recent. That's a recent addition. They unstacked it to paint a square. This is one of the moments where you, as a space journalist, sit here and be like, so they unstacked it and they painted a square.
So the only thing that's going to happen to that is that it's going to get hot during re-entry. It doesn't serve a purpose of any catches because they're not catching this one. Why do that?
It could be thermal properties. We have seen... Yeah. The weird thing is it's not in the area where a tank is, but there could be a sensor behind that to at least measure the thermal properties. Because we have seen, for example, on the mission extension kit for Falcon 9 that they painted to influence the thermal properties and the heating below that. So maybe there's like a sensor below that and they measure if they paint certain parts of Starship to influence the heat that it gets. That's the only thing I actually can come up with here, why they would paint it. But in general, rockets are painted for two purposes. Either looks or B, because you want to thermally change something. And I doubt SpaceX wants to paint Starship black for looks.
I mean, you know why? Because it's hip to be square.
Where's my sound effects?
Hey, I could have made a Rolling Stones joke about painted black, but I didn't.
The pun master.
Huey Lewis instead.
So when we were looking at that shot in the upper right-hand corner there, you see the payload bay, and we're looking for those when we get into coast phase. We know more than likely, according to the timeline, they're going to release the 10 test satellites, those Starlink version 2 satellites. And then we're expecting the on-orbit relight to get the ship away from those, since they're all on the same trajectory at that point. Space Junk has a question about the door specifically. Do you guys think that they're going to keep this type of payload bay door going forward, or are we going to see something and I'm going to throw this out there and just kind of answer the question from Gene's perspective. I think it's going to be mission dependent. Adrian, I'm going to come to you first. What do you think about the payload, different types of payload going forward?
I mean, if they want to address and become a bigger, like if they want to have other customers, yes, they have to adjust that payload door. Because, spoiler, a thing like James Webb wouldn't fit through that opening. It would technically fit, but only in very, very small pieces. So yeah, there's probably some sort of chomper system or like giant door system that they will have to do at some point, and we have seen them in the past tinkering with it. Otherwise, they won't get any big payloads. It just wouldn't work because not every satellite is a flat disk.
Yeah, try and remove a Mars bar from a real-world Pez dispenser and see how well that works. It doesn't. So I think they're going to have to come up with some other kind of payload mechanism. I mean, maybe to start, they'll use this to kind of figure out the whole Starlink V2 side, but yeah, I don't see this as a viable long-term solution as a Pez dispenser, or apparently, as Alex has translated it from English to Spanish, a toaster.
Do you think, let me ask you this, Sawyer, while I got you. Do you think they're going to go for the space shuttle barn door type payload first, or as Adrian says, the chomper, the clamshell?
I think it's going to be the clamshell, the chomper. In terms of ease of reopening and reclosing, keep in mind, those payload bay doors, they really only worked in microgravity. On Earth, those things had to have very special mounts attached to them to be able to open them and close them. Those things were heavy. They were bulky. There was a lot of mechanisms within it. It was not super efficient. I think that it's a lot more efficient to be able to do kind of like the, what was it? The Moonraker one with the clamshell type deal. I think that makes more sense.
Which they can't do because of the TPS on the nose, but the clamshell, where it's just going to open up the top and then they'll do some fancy deployment maneuver. That's going to be interesting, and we'll all be here to see it, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So let's recap, guys. Let's talk about New Glenn. We'll talk about why they shifted in the next couple of minutes. Sawyer, I'm going to let you take this one. Give everybody that recap. Give me 1 minute on where we are with New Glenn.
Sure. As you can see by the clock, which now says launch in 30 hours and 32 minutes, we have indeed had a delay. Blue Origin announcing that New Glenn will now launch instead Monday morning, with the window opening at 1 a.m. Eastern, the same 1 to 4 a.m. window that we're used to. This is because of high sea states. They have their landing platform Vessel 1 named Jacqueline out to attempt to catch the first stage booster as it comes back in. After the launch of New Glenn, the wave height's apparently way too high, but Dave Limp, the CEO, saying all weather conditions look better for that new T0 after the 24-hour delay.
And Adrian, who's going to be on that stream again? Remind everybody.
Sawyer, Harry, Chris Bergen, Jack, Max, D, myself, Julia, potentially does, maybe, we'll see. I think I got it. That was all in my head.
Jay,
I mean,
Chris.
Kevin will not be on that stream. Kevin will produce that stream, and with Jay.
That's right.
I'm sure we'll hear Kevin's voice at some point.
Yeah, at some point the voice of God will just chime in.
It's going to be crazy. The entire NSF team is all over both launches. And Adrian, give us the latest on Ryan Caton. We did. There he is, the voice of KMR. Adrian, give us the wrap up. Give us what's going on with Flight 7 right now and what we're looking for potentially Monday.
Yeah, I will quickly speedrun this. Starship is unstacked right now, but we expect that it's planned as SpaceX is going for final inspections. As of now, SpaceX seems to be targeting Monday, just a few hours after New Glenn, for a launch of Starship for the 7th time. Everything looking kind of on track, although weather remains an item, as also confirmed by SpaceX. We will see a restack probably somewhere around the day of tomorrow, as SpaceX is still in the inspection process right now. That's your summary.
I appreciate you guys joining me. Sawyer, thanks for joining us.
Always a pleasure.
Adrian, thank you.
absolute fun. I love this.
Guys, we're going to be really, really busy. I got to thank Kevin in the background for mashing all the buttons. That's what we say from Alabama. We mash them. Kevin, thank you so much for producing this one. I know Jay is in the background as well. A lot of folks in chat helping us on the back end. And everybody in chat, if I started to list them, I would miss somebody. Thank you guys for joining us on this countdown to launch. Don't forget, we got a lot of streams coming up. You need to go and see them all, make plans, join NSF for both Blue Origin New Glenn and SpaceX Flight 7. I'm Gene Rowley for NSF. Thank you guys for joining us today. Remember, dream big and keep your eyes on the stars.
By the way, stay tuned because we have our new daily that is just coming out. So hang with us here. We'll send you right over there and go see all the latest things that have happened the last couple days at Starbase with some camera views you haven't seen yet.
And here we go. We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be nominal.
RCPA chamber pressure looks good.
Traveling up. Roger, planet.
Water towers fly! Yes! Tango down to nominal.
Fighting downside FD off. Say again, FD off. It's orange! Orange 45! Oh my god! Oh my god! Decollage! Look at this! Put that in the big bag,
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together back to the moon and beyond.
This methane will be igniting in the flare, correct?